Oh, where am I? What am I doing? What? What is happening? Hi. Yes, I'm here. What day is it? What time is it? I'm late. I have cats. I'm telling you, cats. But I'm here. I'm so excited. I got the book. I was worried that as I fall out of shot. Hi. I was worried I wasn't going to get the book. I did. I got the book. On the way home. It's really short. Though. So I'm going to like drag this out and then find like another. I'll probably read the Bill Anderson thing. But this looks pretty good. It's got pictures. On Laura Ingalls Wilder on the way home, the diary of a trip from South Dakota to Mansfield, Missouri in 1894, which is perfect because that gets them all the way. We did the whole having a baby, being married, and Alonzo having a stroke thing. So then how do they wind up? In Missouri, which is where the museum is, where the Wilder house is, where Laura and Alonzo are buried, and all that. So that is where the book's gotten written and where it all happened. Is in Mansfield, Missouri. So did it. The cats are a little crazy. They're almost getting along. They're almost getting along. They will. Morticia and Roswell will sleep on the bed together, and it's like great. And then they wake up and go, "I still hate you." Roswell's pretty darn friendly, but Morticia's still like, interloper, newcomer. And she's just like, So, but they're hi. And Roswell, she's like, what? I'm fine. But she's, it's coming along. They have actually eaten in the same room, which is big, because Roswell likes to go and eat Morticia's food, which is not a big hit. The little Roswell's going for a trip today, because she's doing shots. She has shots. Look at this. This is a nice spot. This goes with the little flowers. Look at this. Goes with the little flowers on the top. It is so cool. Tra-la-la-la-la, boxing up bonnets again. I've been boxing up bonnets and cups and things. And boop-a-doo-da-dee-da-ba. Okay, here we go. So what is happening? Well, today, we did cheesecake. Cheesecake was yesterday. Yes, and Father-in-Law Day, and it was lovely. Today, July is almost over. It is almost August. July is a long month. We've got 31 whole days. So it's going to be August tomorrow. It's a trip. August. Do you know that Nellie Olson's birthday is coming up? The real Nellie Owens. Nellie Owens, who actually beat up Laura Ingalls. Here we go. The 30th is cheesecake. So the 31st, though, is raspberry cake. We get, I don't have any. Raspberry cake day. It is National Avocado Day. Do you like avocados? I didn't used to like avocados. Well, only because when I was a kid, California, avocados are like huge here. When I was a kid, we had an avocado tree in the yard, which meant when there was a windstorm and all these avocados came down on the ground, my father went berserk in the kitchen and we had like avocado this, avocado that, avocado sandwich, avocado soup, avocado dinner, guacamole at every meal. And I was like, ugh. So I burned out on avocados by the time I was like 10. So I didn't eat avocados for years. I think like 5 years ago. I started eating avocado. I ate like a piece of avocado, and now I rather like them. I'm not mad for the guacamole, although I had some that they make for you fresh at the table in Mexico. I'm really good. But I do eat avocados. I ate avocados just the other day. They're good for you. Do you know they're good for you? They're supposed to be very good for you. So it's avocado day. It's raspberry cake day. It's National Mutt Day. I think my kitty Roswell is some kind of mutt. She's like, oh, look, there's Morticia. Okay, good. It's good. Morticia's out and Roswell at the same time. They're not killing each other. It's National Mutt Day. And, you know, I always heard that dogs that were mutts that were blended were smarter. The purebreds weren't as smart as the mixed ones. There you go. National Talk in an Elevator Day. I think National Talk in an Elevator Day might be on hold this year. Because being in an elevator is rather close quarters, and talking in the elevator, droplets. I was in an elevator on the way up to my doctor's office recently, and they had things painted in the floor, and only 4 people could be on the elevator at a time. And I tell you, nobody was talking. They were wearing, because they all worked in a hospital, so they were all not only wearing masks, they were all going, because they all worked at the hospital, and things were rough. So yeah, nobody was talking in the elevator last time I was in an elevator. That might, maybe next year we will have talk in an elevator. I think it's smile and wave in an elevator right now. This is good. National System Administrator Appreciation Day. Are you a system administrator? I'm not. I'm one of those people. I'm sorry, I'm in show business. I'm not fully clear on what a system administrator actually does. But if you're a system administrator, we appreciate you and you are loved. It's National Get Gnarly Day. I suppose this is probably a surfing thing, isn't it? I'm so old. I'm like, get gnarly day. What? I'm gonna say it's surfing, but it maybe. But there you go. It's today. And then tomorrow, like I said, there's a lot of raspberries. It's like raspberries is like every day here, which is great. So that'll happen. Yay. But there you go. I have goldfish. And I have not seen when National Goldfish Day is, but we should start one. Someone spotted my TV Land Award. Who said that? Yes, someone just said, is that a TV Land Award behind you? You are so smart. Should I get this? It's too hard. It's too far away. Yes, I got on TV Land. They had, my category was character most desperately in need of a timeout. I won! And so, yes, it actually has my name on it. I have a TV Land Award. I'm very proud. So happy. So, books on the way home. Now, this is a weird book, but it's good. On the way home, the diary of a trip from South Dakota to Mansfield, Missouri in 1894. We're almost into the 20th century. We've worked our way up from like the mid-1870s. And like, remember when we went way back and we're talking about like, Pa was telling stories about his pa and Omanzo, who's older than Laura, talking about his childhood. And then like the uncles were coming and telling stories that were going way back to like Civil War. We're now almost in the 20th century. 1894, she's almost up to 1900. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then, captions by, illustrations with captions by Rose. Beautiful picture. That's Rose. Rose is 2 years and 4 months old when this picture was taken, 1889. Taking pictures, people getting their picture took on a regular basis. We're so late in the game. She says, I remember the picture taking well. I was impressed by the photographer's stupid pretense that, she was. Impressed by the photographer's stupid pretense that there was a little bird in the camera. The photographer also kept putting my right hand on top of the left, and I kept changing them back because I wanted my carnelian ring to show. And in the end, I went out. So there she is with her ring. And the photographer, remember, he used to go, look at the birdie in the camera. And Rose was like, but adorable. So here we are. This is it. It's on the way home. For 7 years, there had been too little rain. The prairies were dust. Day after day. I just did my hair and it looks nice. Okay, day after day, summer after summer, the scorching winds blew the dust in the sun. Blew the dust, and the sun was brassy in a yellow sky. Sounds like more of this grasshopper weather. Crop after crop failed. Again and again, the barren land must be mortgaged for taxes and food and next year's seed. The agony of hope ended when there was no harvest and no more credit, no money to pay interest and taxes. The banker took the land, and then the bank failed. Well, we're just off to a cheery start. You see, things were getting rough there in the first 4 years, and they were holding out. At the last page of the first 4 years, Laura finally said, okay, I'm a farmer. I know Anza loves farming. I want to go west. I want to be a pioneer. But she said, okay, the pioneers go on to tomorrow through space. We go to the next place physically. But farmers are they're going forward in time. They're looking forward to next year and the next crop. And I can get into that. Yeah, it's like the same thing. And she decided to go with it. It still didn't work. poor girl. Things still went horribly. And the crop sucked. And then in the 1800s, they had a Great Depression too. We all know about the 1930s and the Great Depression and the Waltons. It's okay, we like the Waltons. They're our friends from the other network. The Waltons did dramatize the Great Depression on their show. But the 1800s had a Great Depression, and banks were failing, and things were awful then. So there you go. So the banker took the land, and then the bank failed. So everything was terrible. See, there you go. It was the Great Depression. Here's you're talking about the 1800s. In the 7th year, a mysterious catastrophe was worldwide. Oh, I'm sorry. When was this book written? Yesterday? A serious catastrophe is worldwide. Oh, I know nothing about that. Good book to be reading now. The Panic. Yes, Bethany just said it. The Panic of the 1890s. Thank you. The Panic of the 1890s. You have the 1930s, the Panic of the 90s, and you have like now. And this was a mysterious catastrophe where all banks failed. Aren't you happy banks aren't failing right now? I'm like saying right now because anything could happen. All banks failed. That would suck. I mean, the Depression, it was horrible. Bank failed. From coast to coast, the factories shut down and business ceased. This was a panic. Yes, I'm quite familiar with this situation. It was not a depression, she said. She's very picky. Not a depression. The year was 1893, when no one had heard of depressions. Everyone knew about panics. There had been the Panic of 1797, and you just don't hear enough about that nowadays. The Panic of 1797, 1820, I've heard of that one, 1835, 1857, that's a lot of panics. They're supposed to be further apart. That panic every 20 years. And 1873. Now, I knew about the Panic of 1873 because that affected directly the characters in Little House on the Prairie. And that's why on the show, because the show was airing in the 1970s, and in the 1970s, we had an enormous recession. Remember, we had little buttons, whip inflation now? It was quite the recession. People were out of work. There was enormous inflation. People were talking about they didn't beef. The price of beef went up and there were shortages. And people, the hamburger helper became like insanely popular because you could like stretch meals. And people would go to the supermarket and people were not eating beef. They were buying cheap cuts, like the cheapest ground beef, because you could not. It's like a big deal to get your hands on a steak in the 1970s. And the thing was when, that's why Michael inserted all these little jokes. When people were watching Little House in the 70s, sometimes they had been furloughed, they were off work, they had lost their job, the factory had closed. Remember a lot of the automotive factories and things were closing in the 70s. They were trying to collect unemployment, they were out of work, there was terrible, they couldn't afford their homes, interest rates were terrible. There were people watching the show, and so when Pa would say, 2 cents for a slate pencil, how are we going to afford that slate pencil? What are we going to do? We'll have to sell. People at home were going, yeah, and they could get into it. They totally identified. But yes, there you go. And that's why, the Waltons were popular too, the Depression. Because, financially things were kind of awful in the 1970s. We forget. We think of disco, platform shoes, and movies and things. But financially things really were awful. Gas, right. Oh, rationing, gasoline. Does your license plate end in an odd number or an even number? Maybe you're allowed to get gasoline today. Oh yeah. I had to think about that when gassing up the car to go shoot Little House on the Prairie. It was so that's why I and my whole family were so ecstatically happy that I had gotten on a television series in 1974. So, oh yeah. Food, glorious food, hot, food around the corner. Remember? Did you ever see that cartoon? About the little flea and the dog. It's a Depression or cartoon. Food around the corner. No more meatless Tuesdays. That's kind of what happened when I got Little House in the Prairie. Because it was the 70s and nobody had any money. So in the 1870s, I'm quite familiar with the 1873 Panic, but I didn't realize they had one in 1820, 1835, 1857, 1873. That's not good. A panic was nothing new to Grandpa. See, there you go. He had seen them before. This one was no worse than usual, he said, and nothing like as bad as the wartime. Now we were all safe in our beds. Nobody was rampaging but Coxey's armies. What's a Coxey's army? That's C-O-X-E-Y. All the way from California, Coxey's armies of unemployed were seizing the railroad trains, jam-packing the cars, and running them full speed, open throttle, hell for leather toward Washington. They came roaring to the town, yelling justice for the working man, and stopped and swarmed out, demanding plenty to eat and 3 days' ration to take with them, or they burned the town. Oh, wait, you mean there were demonstrations? Oh, wait, nobody had any money, and businesses were all closed, and nobody had a job, and there were demonstrations? No, I have no idea. Oh, did that happen? There you go. These sort of things also happened in the late 60s, early 70s, and these sort of things are happening now. It's all back. Everything old is new again. Wow. People gave them everything to get rid of them. In all the cities, federal troops were guarding the government's buildings. Federal troops were guarding the government. Heard this somewhere before. I was 7 years old, so this is Rose's introduction. Clearly, Grandpa. She means Charles. Talking about the old them. I was 7 years old and the second reader at school, but I read the third reader and the fourth, and Robinson Crusoe and Gulliver's Travels. The Chicago Inter-Ocean came every week, and after the grown-ups had read it, I did. Is this tripping? Yeah, how long is this? This is going to be long. Okay, no, but we do want to read. Rose's perspective is very interesting because she's the one who's all super libertarian. All right, so she'd read everything. After the grown-ups had read it, I did. I did not understand all of it, but I read it. It said that east of the Mississippi, which he spells Miss-Mississippi, it's cute, there were no trains on the railroad tracks. The dispatchers had dispatched every train to the faraway east to keep them safe from Coxey's armies. So now the armies were disbanded and walking on foot toward Washington, robbing and raiding and stealing and begging for food as they went. For a long time, I had been living with Grandpa and Grandma and the aunts in DeSmet because nobody knew what would become of my father and mother. Ooh, okay, like Laura left that bit out, that they sent Rose off. You know, they kept talking about the home folks and occasionally visiting Charles and Caroline. Pardon this. They sent Rose away to live with Charles and Caroline in DeSmet in town because Laura and Almanzo didn't have any money. Literally could not feed her. So, hello, Kitty. So, you know, I remember Rose takes quite the political stance that she doesn't believe in people getting benefits, which there's a big controversy about because the Ingalls family, and yes, Rose, did get enormous benefits from the government. They totally did. I mean, technically a homestead is you are working with the government, but you're getting things from the government. And they did get benefits from the government. But then publicly they were like, no, it's a bad idea. You shouldn't get benefits from the government. And, you know, Coxey's army said, clearly, Kitty, yep, you guessed it, the cat is here. The cat is here, and the cat is, so, now you can be here, Kitty, but you can't wreck the joint, okay? You have to hang out and chill and just be a nice kitty. So, yeah, Rose is going on about the Coxey, and on the one hand, yes, she's saying it from her perspective, it was awful as a kid to see this happen, but notice she isn't suggesting, gee, it's terrible they lost their jobs and maybe somebody should do something to help them since they don't have any food. She's just complaining that they're loud and going to Washington and demanding food. How dare they? She's definitely taken a hard line on that. But, you know, her family was poor too. So she doesn't, Laura doesn't, but Rose rats her out here. I had been living with Grandpa and Grandma, the aunts at DeSmet, because nobody knew what would become of my father and mother. Only God knew. They had diphtheria. I think she's trying to say diphtheria, but it's literally diphtheria, because I guess it was new to her then. A hard word and dreadful. Yes, it's also spelled diphtheria, but there you go. I did not know what it was exactly, only it was big and black, and it meant I might never see my father and mother again. Did you know this about this? Is no wonder Rose. People say Rose was a hard woman. Rose was a hard woman, but I'm here. This is pretty rough. She didn't know if her parents were sick, and she went to live with her grandpa, and didn't know what was going to happen. Then my father, oh my, manlike, would not listen to reason and stay in bed. Grandma almost scolded about that to the aunts. Bound and determined to get out and take care of the stock he was. And for working too hard too, Miss Barrows, and for working too hard too soon, he was stricken. So Rose is saying she's coming down hard on Almanzo, that stroke he had after the diphtheria. And the doctor did say he probably should have gone to work so quickly. She is like, it is his fault. She is taking a hard line that, sorry, it's his fault. She's mean here. Now he would be bedridden all his days, and what would Laura do with me on her hands besides? Well, okay, he was not bedridden all his days. Yes, he was a mess for a while. And the doctor did say, I have things on the floor here. And the doctor did say he should have rested longer. But Rose is really giving him the business. This is why people have issues with this Rose thing. It's weird. There you go. You get the real thing here. Mm-hmm. Stricken. But when I saw my father again, he was walking slowly. He limped through the rest of his 90 years and was never as strong as he had been. We lived then in our own house in De Smet, away from Main Street, where only a footpath went through the short brown grasses. It was a big rented house and empty. Upstairs and down, it was dark and full of stealthy little sounds at night. Mice, rats, they need a cat. See, they need a cat. You have this one here, yeah. Get a cat. Stealthy little sounds at night, that's disturbing. But then the lamp was lighted in the kitchen where we lived. Our cook stove and table and chairs were there. The bed was in an empty room, and at bedtime my trundle bed was brought into the warmth from the cook stove. We were camping, my mother said. Wasn't it fun? I knew she wanted me to say yes, so I did. To me, everything was simply what it was. I'm telling you, that Rose, you should stop that, Kate. This is why we sometimes, hi, put Kitty in the other room. Rose is tough. Rose is tough about that. I was going to school while my father and mother worked. Reading, writing, spelling, arithmetic, penmanship-filled days, almost unbearably happy with achievements satisfying Miss Barrow's strict standards. Procrastination is the thief of time. She's right. Procrastination is the thief of time. I wrote 20 times in my penmanship book. Wow. Without error or blot. And evil communications corrupt good manners. Sweet are the uses of adversity. Every T and D exactly twice as tall as a vowel, and every I, L, L, exactly 3 times as tall, every T crossed, every I dotted. Oh no, Rose isn't uptight at all. Are you a little uptight, girl? She's a little tightly wound. I'm a little concerned now about Rose. That is, wow. Yeah, she's a little rough here. I mean, she's a good student, clearly, but she sounds like a hard case even there as a child. I had every key. And the things, this is like, do you remember Jane Eyre? This is like something out of Jane Eyre. Evil communications corrupt good manners. Procrastination is the thief of time. It's like, okay. All right. Adversity. All the way home, down the long boardwalk in late afternoons, we diligent scholars warmly remembered our adored Miss Barrow's grave. Well done. And often we sang a rollicking song. Wait, she had fun. She actually had fun. Okay, this is good. A rollicking song. It was the song of those days, heard more often than Ta-ra-ra boom-die. Does anyone remember Ta-ra-ra boom-die? Okay, I am old. I am 58, and my mother, gasp with a friendly gasp, my mother was 40 when I was born. So if she were alive, she would be 98. Oh, good heavens. So my mother remembered all the old school stuff that, like, Grandma had taught her. So my mother was like, ta-ra-ra-boom-die, da-da-da. The way my mother taught it to me, though, which may not be the real lyrics, was, ta-ra-ra-boom-die, I hear the chicken say, I laid an egg today. Ta-ra-ra-boom-die. I don't know what the real, but that's what I learned. Ta-ra-ra, and she's saying more popular than ta-ra-ra-boom-die. My Aunt Grace, a jolly big girl, often sang it. Sometimes my mother did, and nearly all the time you could hear some man or boy whistling it. This is this great song she left. Dakota Land. Oh, Dakota Land, sweet Dakota Land, as on thy burning soil I stand, and look away across the plains. I wonder why it never rains, till Gabriel blows his trumpet sound and says the rain has gone around. We don't live here, we only stay, 'cause we're too poor to get away. Oh, well, that's not a happy song. She's like, it's hot and it's miserable, there's no rain, and we're broken, can't leave, the crops don't grow. And they made a song about it. This Rose, not a cheerful person. My mother did not have to go out to work. She was married. My father was the provider. He got a day's work here and there. He could drive a team. He could carpenter or paint or spell a storekeeper at dinner time. And once he was on a jury downtown. My mother and I slept at Grandma's then every night. The jury was kept under lock and key, and my father could not come home. But he got his keep in $2 every day for 5 straight weeks, and he brought back all that money. My mother worked to save. She sewed at the dressmaker's from 6 o'clock to 6 o'clock every day but Sunday, and which means your mother worked. She said, my mother did not have to go out to work. And then she says, my mother was sewing for the dress. Laura worked all the time. She constantly had a job. So Rose going, my mother didn't have to work, and then she talked about her job. Like I said, Rose, it's like reality? No, I didn't. Okay. And then came home to get supper. I had peeled the potatoes thin and set the table. I was not allowed to touch the stove. One day my mother made 60 good firm buttonholes in 1 hour, 60 minutes. Nobody else could work so well and so fast. And every day, 6 days a week, she earned $1, which means your mother did have to go out to work. Which you just said she did 2 minutes ago. We were going to the land of the Big Red Apple when we had enough money. And yes, there's a book called The Land of the Big Red Apple. And it's Roger McBride, which is Rose's buddy. And so they did. I mean, she was kind of in on the whole thing with him. But there is a book called Land of the Big Red Apple. Land of the Big Red Apple. Someone named Mr. Sherwin had gone there and seen it. So the pictures he sent back were true. Pictures of huge red apples and rows of much smaller trees and of buildings confusingly named Mansfield. They were not a man's field, and the print under them said they were the gem city of the Ozarks. Around and under, what are you doing? Okay, we're going to have a pause commercial break. The cat's getting locked in the other room. Kitty, are you going to have to go in the other room and play? Wait, we have toys. Here, come, do this. Don't do that. Don't do that. Do this. Come over here. Yeah, you are going to have, your food is over here. I'm hungry. I'm hungry. Okay, we're going to feed you. Pause. It was time, apparently, for Kitty's second lunch. So, yes, Rose is really interesting. I'd heard about Rose. I have not read this. I have not read all this honking and braying about the land of the Big Red Apple here. The gem city of the Ozarks and Mansfield is lovely. It is lovely. Around and under these pictures on beautiful shiny paper, I read that the gem city of the Ozarks was in the land of the Big Red Apple in Missouri. Now, I knew 3 misstates, Mississippi and Wisconsin. What is she talking about? Okay, she did Mississippi, like it's, and then it's Wisconsin, has a W in it. Mississippi, Wisconsin, and Missouri. Paul said scornfully that it wasn't Wisconsin, it was Wisconsin, but Wis didn't make sense to me. What is Rose's deal? What is Rose's deal? I'm just like, she's losing me. Boom, today she took my pants away. This is a good one. This is just weird. Paul? Who's Paul? Wait, did she even say who Paul was? Paul just suddenly appeared. Paul and George Cooley were coming with us to the land of the Big Red Apple. Paul was oldest. George was next. I was only the youngest, but they had to let me boss because I was a girl. And because clearly she would boss everyone and everybody. So we had always known each other. Their father had 2 big teams and 2 big covered wagons, and Paul would be allowed to drive one of them. He said his father said he could. I did not want to believe this, but I knew that Paul would never lie. He was a big boy, too, going on 10 years old. Imagine letting the 10-year-old drive. Now, he got a wagon. Well, Paul's big enough. He's a big boy. He can drive. He's 10. Oh, I'm drive the wagon. My mother had saved $100 to take to the land of the Big Red Apple. Okay, that's a lot of money. And buy a house. All those dollars were on one piece of paper named $100 bill. She hid it in her writing desk, a fascinating wooden box which my father had made and polished so shiny smooth that stroking it was rapture. It opened on little brass hinges to lie spread flat and be a slanting green felt surface to write on. At the top was a darling wooden tray to hold my mother's pearl-handled pen, and besides this was an inkwell. And the green felt was on a lid that lifted up on tinier hinges to reveal the place for writing paper underneath it. I was allowed to see and touch the desk only when my mother opened it. The $100 bill was a secret. My mother locked it in the desk. Mr. and Mrs. Cooley knew, perhaps Paul and George did, but we must not talk about it. I must never, never speak one word about that $100 bill, not to anyone, never, no matter what happened. Okay, why does this make me think she's totally going to tell someone? In the shade of the big empty house, my father painted our covered wagon. It was really better than a covered wagon. It had been a two-seated hack, though now it had only the front seat. My father painted it shiny black. He made a flat top for it of black oilcloth and put straight curtains of the black oilcloth on both sides and the back. Each curtain would roll up when he pulled a rope. Behind the seat he fitted the bed springs, and my mother made up the bed on them. At night she would make my bed on the floor in front of the seat. And there's a sewing box made of cigar boxes by Almanzo for a first anniversary gift. No, that's pretty. No box there. She baked 24 hardtacks for the journey. Hardtack. They were as large as a plate, flat and hard. Being so hard and dry, they would not spoil as bread would. Yeah, but then you got to eat them. Ick. It was a hardtack to gnaw, but it tasted almost like a cracker. We were going to make haste, driving every day to reach the land of the big red apple and get settled before winter. We could not stop to look for work, but we would need more food on the way, so my father bought a box of asbestos fire mats to trade or to sell for 10 cents apiece. Asbestos fire mat? I guess. Fire mats, and there you go. Fire mats were a new thing, unheard of. They looked like round pieces of gray-white pasteboard edged with a narrow strip of tin. Okay, I'm so old, I'm now going, oh my God, I remember these. Not like the big ones, I remember little tiny ones. They were like things you would put hot things on the counter or on your table with. And it was the asbestos with the rim. Of course, we now know asbestos is really, really bad for you. I mean, think if it's solid, like you probably didn't do anything, but asbestos fibers, they're in the air. But then asbestos was like miracle invention. Everybody loved asbestos back in the day. Yep, narrow strip of tin. Nobody could believe they would not burn until my father proved it. He would urge doubters to make a hot fire, hotter and hotter, and then he laid one of those mats right into the flames. It would glow red, and the watchers would jeer. But that mat came out unharmed. Put one of those fire mats under a pot, my father would say, and the pot could boil bone dry, not a potato in, with so much as scorch. Every woman alive needed one of those mats. So they were like actually using them. I mean, I saw them where you put it on the table and put your hot casserole on it, and by asbestos would, but they're like lighting them on fire and putting them near the food. I'm like, that's probably bad. Asbestos is poisonous. Everything that we were taking all the way, we packed under the bed springs first. Next, the things we'd be using, the table and the chairs with folding legs, and the sheet iron camp stove that my father had made, the hammock that blind Aunt Mary had netted and given to us as a parting present, the writing desk, well wrapped, plates, cups, frying pan, coffee pot, wash basin, water pail, picket ropes and pegs, the hardtack in its box. My father tied down the back curtain. Outside he fastened the hen coop while the hens fluttered and squawked inside the wire netting. Strapped the whole chicken coop onto the back of the thing. Yikes. But they would soon be used to traveling. Live chickens in boxes strapped to the car. Okay. In the dawn next morning, we said goodbye to Grandpa and Grandma, to the Aunts Mary and Carrie and Grace, who all stood around to watch us go, though Aunt Mary's beautiful blue eyes could not see us. The mares were hitched to the hack. Their colts, Little Pet and Prince, would follow them. The Coolies' covered wagon had gone ahead, and Paul was driving the second one. I climbed up over the wagon wheel and onto the seat by myself. My mother sat beside me. Beside her, my father tightened the lines, and everyone said, "Goodbye, goodbye, don't forget to write." Well, people really used to say that. I won't, I will, you be sure to, goodbye. And we drove away. Away from Grandma's house with its rag carpets and rocking chair, the hymn books on the organ, my very own footstool, away from the chalky schoolroom where angelic Miss Barrows taught kindergarten. Primer, first and second, away from Angelic Miss Burroughs taught kindergarten, primer, first and second readers, away from the summer sidewalks where grasshoppers hopped in the dry grass and the silver-lined poplar leaves rattled overhead. Away from the gaunt, gray, empty house, and from Mrs. Sherwood and her sister, who sometimes on sweltering afternoons asked me to fetch 10 cents worth of ice cream from the faraway ice cream parlor and shared it with me. Away from De Smet and the land of the big red apple. She just dropped these other characters into a sentence. It's very strange. Pa and Ma Ingalls' house in De Smet. This picture was sent to us Mansfield some years after we left Dakota. Oh, years later. That's a nice house. Yes, that we were reading about. That's a lovely house. Okay. All right. My mother made daily notes of our journey in a little 5-cent memorandum book, writing with pencil on both sides of the pages, of course. Nobody then wasted paper. This is her record. Wow. Okay. That's just the intro with Rose. We need to, somebody buy Rose a drink. Really. Rose needs to chill. I don't know what Rose's deal is, but wow. And that was Rose trying to be, charming and talk about her childhood, and it still came off as, arr, arr. Rose dear, calm yourself. So, I don't know. Rose is a little rough, but, okay. Now we will read some of Laura's actual notes here. Okay. There's a little Calvin Avenue. Okay. July 17th, 1894. Started at 8:40. 3 miles out, Russian thistles, harvesters and poor wheat. Crossed the line into minor country at 2 o'clock. Camped by a spring that cannot be pumped, but there is feed for the horses. Grain about 8 inches high. Will go about 1.5 bushels to the acre. Hot wind. That's just weird notes. But there you go. July 18th. Farmers mowing the grain for hay. At 11:30 we left Howard 1 mile east. Farm work well along here. Dragging for next year's crop is all done without troubling to take this year's grain off. Worst crops we have seen yet. No grass. Standing grain 3 inches high, burned, brown, and dead. Crossed the Northwestern Railroad tracks at 2:25. Crossed the line into Mick country at 5 o'clock. Drove 2.5 miles and camped. Imagine now the cars that go quite a bit faster than, 2 miles an hour, driving 2.5 miles and saying, well, time to make camp. That's mighty slow going. This is taking them forever. Yeah, so she's talking about going a few miles. It's taking them forever. We drove, and finally, 2.5 miles, finally just gave up. So what did they go? 10 miles in a day? That's to the store. Yeah, you go to the mall, you got 50 miles. We had a little dust storm in the afternoon and drew the wagons up close together, for we could not see what was coming. The wind changed from a hot south wind to a cold north wind, both hard. Though the thermometer stood at 102 in the wagon. It was 102! It's July, it's now. It was 102 degrees, and they're driving around in this wagon. And it's taking them all afternoon to go 2.5 miles. Harsh. July 19th. It rained in the night, but did not blow. Nothing in the wagons got wet except one horse blanket. We had fried chicken for breakfast and got a late start at 9:15. Fried chicken for breakfast. Fried chicken for breakfast, yum. Weather is cool, but pleasant. Wind in the north and dust laid by the rain. Groves are thick and look so nice, but farmers are mowing their grain for hay. We found a good camping place down in a ravine, out of the wind and nearly out of sight. Cooked our supper and ate it. As we were washing the dishes, a man came and said if the man that owned the place saw us, he would make us trouble. As he lived just over the hill, we thought we would never move across the road and be all right there. So we hitched up and drove across. It was a very nice camping place. In the evening, 2 men came up to talk. The thermometer stood at 92. This is in the evening. Mr. Cooley and I went to a house to buy milk. It was swarming with children and pigs. They looked a good deal alike. Oh! That's... Yeah, we went to this house to buy some milk as children and pigs, and couldn't tell them apart. Yikes! They looked a good deal alike. Well, that's mean. That's not like the other books. This is kind of rude. course, they probably did look alike. Oh my. All right. How long can I keep this up? It does turn into like real descriptions in normal writing. It's like this first chapter, she does like her day-by-day notes. The whole book is not like this. Thank heavens. Because right now I'm going, was this a hit? Because that intro from Rose was just harsh. And it's like Jane Eyre. And now I'm reading these weird notes where she's insulting people's children. Oh, dear me. Started at 1:10. One of Cooley's horses cut his leg a little on a barbed wire fence. We left Bridgewater half a mile to the east. Mr. Cooley drove into town, but we went on just south of it with the rest of the teams. And we came to the first piece of oats worth cutting that we have seen since we left De Smet. And they are not very good. Now, she is describing how all the way there, crops are failing, crops are bad, people are starving, everything's terrible. So you're kind of getting the picture of this whole panic, depression thing. We watered the teams at a public well with windmill by the side of the road. The water is good all through McCook County. Wells are 120 feet deep on the average, and nearly every well has a windmill. This is good country. All through McCook, this year is the first crop failure in 16 years. There are lots of groves of trees and nice houses, big corn cribs, many hogs, but we've not seen many cattle, though there is a creamery in Bridgewater. People say the corn crop is very poor, but it's the best we've ever seen at this time of year. Cross the line into Hutchinson County at 10. Here they're mowing buffalo grass for hay. We passed a great pile of stones that had been cleared off the land. Saw some good wheat. Mr. Cooley overtook us at 12 o'clock when we came to a Russian settlement. He had not been able to get grain or any feed in Bridgewater, though there are 3 mills in the town. A Russian settlement. The Russian settlement. Adobe houses, barns, chicken houses, piles of peat to burn. The houses are back from the road, and most of them are built long. The house in one end and the barn in the other. We stopped at one house for water. Okay, I swore I'd read this book, but I'm ready to give up. This is like someone published my planning notebook for a last Disney trip, right? It's like, someone's going, no wonder it's supposed to go. And then this is an awful, awful sentence. This is bad. In the 1800s, no, it's not a racism thing, it's almost worse. In the 1800s, people who were developmentally disabled or had even had an accident and couldn't speak, or had a stroke, or had been born developmentally delayed, what have you, or had Down syndrome, all just kind of thrown into the same category. They didn't distinguish at all, and they didn't say, oh, we went by so-and-so's house and their child was developmentally delayed. They said the person was an idiot. This could have encompassed many conditions, but it meant that they had a mental issue of some kind, difficulty speaking, what have you. And it was the 1890s, they just said, well, an idiot. And Laura says, we stopped at a house for water. There was an idiot there, a full-grown man, an awful sight. That's just not really reeking of compassion at all. So, I mean, it's true in the 1890s, people used idiot. That was like the word, like, oh, yes, so-and-so is an idiot, and we take good care of them. Well, what? But there was an idiot there, a full-grown man, a terrible sight, an awful sight. And this is the, the last house she was at, she said they had pigs and children, and they resembled each other. This is not a happy person writing these notes, or particularly nice. These are not nice notes. Did she want these published? Because these sound like she was having a really bad day, that it was really hot, like it was 102, and she's in the wagon, and it sounds like she was miserable. She didn't want to go. It was far, and it was hot, and they had no money, and they were having to sell asbestos pads to pay for the trip. And their kid Rose is a little odd, and they're schlepping cross country, and it sounds like she's, is idiot politically correct? No, Not now, and barely then. Barely politically correct then. Because they just kind of threw everyone in one big category. You know, it's like the 30th anniversary of the Americans with Disability Act right now. And here we got Laura going as an idiot. So I think she was in a horrible place when she was writing this. And that's why instead of, oh, it was a beautiful day, and, you know, we were riding along, and El Manso and I were having such a lovely time, she's going, yeah, stop this house, had children and pigs, and they looked alike. And then the next house, there was an idiot. Like, yikes! So I think things were just really, really super rough and unpleasant, and she did not care for this trip. And so these are some very angry, unhappy notes with saying bad things about people. So that's harsh. So after she insulted the people in that house, we can see timber along the Jim River. It is only 6 miles away on our right hand, but 18 miles ahead of us. This is nice country, but as one Russian said, now we are going to insult the Russians in the town. Nix good this year, nix good last year. Pardon? We carried water in the wagon and camped without water in a very good place, except for that lack. Thermometer, 100 degrees in the wagon. It's 100 degrees in the wagon. She's lost her mind. She's just lost her mind. I'm sorry. I'm just like saying all these terrible things to people. The road had been almost perfectly level for 2 days. Only now and then a small ravine, no hills. Land here is priced from $2,500 to $3,000 a quarter section. The accountant has stepped in. Remember I said the accountant kept writing the story? The first 4 years. I'm gonna do like one more section, and then we'll pick it up tomorrow. But it's harsh. There's a lot to take in right away. July 21st. Thought we would get an early start, but everything went wrong. Of course. She's in a horrible mood. Everything went wrong. Of course. Okay, Laura is in a bad mood. This is the story of Laura in a bad mood, and it was hot. Harshness. Of course. We're out of bread. Yes, this has to be read in the right tone. We are out of bread. So baked biscuits, and we made gravy with the chicken we cooked last night, poured it over the biscuits, and called it chicken pie. When we were hitching up, we let go of old Pet and started off. Manly had the halter off little Pet, so she could not go after her mother. I said, whoa, I went toward her, and as soon as she saw I was coming, she ran. I could not catch her. Mr. Cooley chased her on his pony, and they were far away before he could heed her. She was going to Missouri without waiting for us. We finally got started at 8:20. Huh. It's just going to say, huh, after everything. We are going gradually toward the river. It's only 5 miles southwest. Oh, and there's timber thick along its bank. Harvesting and stacking is done here. Plowing begun. At 10:30, the bluffs across the Jim River in sight. At 12, we crossed the line into Yankton County. And now, at 2:15, we are on the Jim River flats. And they are flat as a floor. Some grain fields are on them and meadows, and beside the road are 2 natural-grown trees at first we've seen, and little scrubs they are, too. Harumph! It's the Harumph book! 160 acres of corn are in sight on one side of the road and 80 on the other side at 4 p.m. We have camped on the James River down among the trees by a watermill. It is a very pleasant place. Only we are not far from a family or settlement of Russians. They all seem to be one family, but Manley said he counted 36 children, all the same size, and Mr. Cooley says there are 50, all under 15 years old. They come down to our camp and stand around and stare at us. Rumph! The man who seems to be the head of the camp, tribe, or commune, or whatever it is, Laura, the commune or whatever it is, these people, said they came here 5 years ago, and now they own 17 quarter sections. They have herds of cattle, good horses, and 300 geese. That sounds nice, Laura. Just at dusk, a boy came with a great big fish and wanted to know if we would pay for it. The men were gone, and Emma Cooley and I did not know what it was worth. The boy said we might have it for a dime, but Emma and I could not scrape up a dime between us. We were about to give up when the men came and bought the fish. In a few minutes, the boy came back with 2 smaller ones, and he wanted 15 cents for them, but finally took 10. We're going to sleep tonight to the sound of running water. Manley killed a snake this evening. Okay, that's enough for for today. Tomorrow is July 21st, and she complains some more, and then things start to liven up a bit. Things start to chill out. But initially, what we were following is Laura saying, it's hot, and I'm in a wagon, and there are people. This is Laura Ingalls, It's 102 Degrees, and I Hate Everyone diary. That's what this is. Because she was so nice in the other book. She was talking about lovely things. She is not a happy camper. Literally camping, not a happy camper. And insulting all of the people that she meets along the way. Someone just said, this is PMS. Yes, this is the PMS diary of Laura Ingalls Wilder. This is. But it's actually kind of interesting because, as I have said before, the 1800s were hard. Melissa Gilbert and I were on this thing for the TV Critics Association because they're doing the big, fabulous documentary about Laura Ingalls Wilder and the whole PBS Masters thing. And they were interviewing us, and they said, "You want to live in the 1800s?" And of course, Melissa's like, "Well, actually, I'm up on a little. I got crops and chickens right now. I'm kind of doing it." She's totally into it, and I said no. Being on the show was great. Got to wear the clothes and dress up and play 1800s and talk about the 1800s and act like you're in the 1800s and eat the food. And then I got to go home at the end of the day to air conditioning and pool and like my room and and TV. And that I really enjoyed modern conveniences. I really like air conditioning and having doctors and antibiotics and things like that. Dentists. And I much prefer this time period. I'm very much a creature of the modern age. And the 1800s they're birdy, but everything was hard. Everything was just it was just murder to do. And people forget. People say, I want to be in the 1800s, but then it's like, really? Okay, so yeah, toilet paper as we know it, no. Life was hard. Everything was just really hard. You had to do everything by hand. It was rough. And this is an example. Because things aren't going so well. They don't have any money. They couldn't scrape. They said, we don't have a dime. We can't buy the fish. We don't have a dime. Didn't have any money. Remember, just a book or so ago? Pa was out buying sewing machines. They bought an organ for Mary to play when she visited. She didn't have a dime to buy the fish. Yeah, they've had multiple crop failures. Almanzo's not as well as he was. They got the kid, and they don't have any money. And they're going cross country. They're hoping Missouri will be better. And they're passing through this area where everyone else is having a horrible time and is poor, and there's no money, and people have no crops, and it's awful. And it's hot. And it's 102 degrees. And so she's not happy. So the whole diary is, and then we went to this other place, and it was awful too. And it was just as bad as the place we stayed the night before. And the people were stupid, and they had too many children, and I didn't like them. And that's what's happening right now, because Laura's just really unhappy. And I admit I can't blame her, because I probably would not have been happy in that wagon either. I might not have been quite as insulting to the Russians and the other people I ran into. I'm a little more friendly. But there you go. She's just, Laura, on the way home where Laura has a horrible time. It does perk up a bit as it goes on. And we will read some more of this I'm in a bad mood journal tomorrow. It'll be very exciting. And we'll have snacks, and perhaps the cat will not knock over the camera and the lighting and attack me in the middle of reading. She's just like this. She's a baby. April, so it's May, June, July. The cat is barely 3 months old. She's a kitten, and she's like, "What's this? What's this? Hi. What's this? Can I knock it over? What's this?" She's adorable, but she learns quickly. You show that cat something once, so she won't do it. She probably won't do it tomorrow. She's like really smart. So there you go. All right, tomorrow. Tomorrow's Saturday. Yeah, we'll be on time. We'll be on time. We will. I have 10,000 things to do. So, this tomorrow we'll read more of Sad Laura, and it'll be fine. And it'll be whatever, raspberry cake day or something. And I will see you tomorrow. So wash your hands and wear your mask and call your friends. And I will see you tomorrow. Bye.